How can someone balance reality of a project?
Implement the strategies.
This is Soundview's Executive Insight. My name is Andrew Clancy, Senior Editor for Soundview. I'm here today with Ed Wallace, the President and Chief Relationship Officer of the Relational Capital Group. Ed, thank you for being with us.
My pleasure.
The best organizations are guided by simple yet powerful ideas, and the Relational Capital Group, perfect example. There's a statement on your site that today nearly everything can be digitized, commoditized, or outsourced, except for relationships. Do relationships get overlooked as companies think to focus on other areas of the business, be it strategy or innovation? What are your thoughts?
That's an interesting question, Andrew, because relationships don't get overlooked. In fact, 89% of executives believe that relationships are the key to their own success and their team's success year over year. Yet when they ask these same executives, what do you do about that intentionally, only 24% can actually say they do anything about it. And when they're probed further on that, they say we have a CRM system. Now, I don't know about you, but I don't really believe there's an R in CRM. Human beings put the R into CRM systems. Yet these really smart people who are saying relationships are the key to their success, in fact, on their home webpage, my guess is customer relationships are on that front page, are throwing technology at what essentially is a human calculation. So if I were to ask you, why is that? You may say something like, well, they're difficult. There's too many. Which are the right ones? There's no return. We've never been more connected in the history of civilization. Yet our business relationships, everything our firm researches and uncovers, have never been more shallow for those reasons. In fact, less than 5% of business professionals actually think about relationships intentionally. So I don't think relationships are overlooked. I think it's more, what do we do about them? How do we do it?
One step that you suggest to turn contacts into great business relationships is to establish common ground.
Right.
What's the process for finding common ground? What type of research should people be performing, if at all, before they try to enter into a relationship?
Well, it's always good to do some kind of background, whether it be on the individual, their company, the company's strategy. Ultimately, though, the moment of truth is when you're with that person in that first interaction. And you've got that one shot to try to find a way in to launch a business relationship. We've got a concept that we've pioneered with our clients called relational GPS. And relational GPS is just like a GPS system in our cars. They're the new roadmap to travel success. The relational GPS is the roadmap to relational success. Understanding the business and personal goals, the passions or causes, things people care deeply about, and the struggles, and what human being doesn't have struggles. And to try to get to those in that first interaction is really what that first meeting is about. It's trying to come forward with something provocative that might be on that person's desk. And we call those learnabouts. Andrew, what I'd like to do today, if you agree, is learn about. And that learn about says an awful lot about the preparation you did for the meeting. It says an awful lot about whether you have good intentions towards that person. So absolutely, preparation needs to be done, and coming forward with something that might be on a CEO's desk, which might be different that's on a CFO's desk, that might be different that's on the Director of Purchasing's desk, and trying to align with that with the right questions. The other thing we fall into in first meetings, we hear a couple of good answers from our prospective client or whoever our colleague, and we want to go right to solution with them. They're still trying to figure out if they like us. They're still trying to figure out if they trust us or can trust us or share us around their organization. There's a quality at play here called credibility. And credibility, the definition of credibility when I was writing, it was really compelling for me because I thought credibility was integrity. You know, doing what you say you're going to do, keeping your promises. But credibility actually comes first. The definition is the power to elicit belief. Now, I never put the word power with credibility in my life. I always thought of, well, they've got an education, they've worked in the industry for a period of time, they're credible. But that person that you're working with, they're assessing whether or not you're going to be believable to them and their organization. It doesn't matter what your solution is. We talked earlier about everything can be commoditized, digitized, or outsourced except for relationships. That person is assessing the human being, what that person is going to make them look like, whether they can trust that person, whether that person has good intentions towards them. The Wharton School recently did a study, and it was around 75% of our buying decisions, normal human beings, are emotional rather than rational, and 25% are rational. And that carries over into business as well. So they're really thinking about the experience they're going to have with this individual rather than, oh, well, I'm going to save some money on the bottom line if I work with them.
You'd said as well about the desire to immediately begin to talk about solutions when you meet with someone or you're meeting with a prospective client. Now, the point is to try to establish a relationship and understand their GPS prior to introducing solutions. But at what point does it become okay to start going into the solutions? When is that good in terms of the establishment of the relationship?
We always like to suggest that you err on the side of resisting the urge to offer solutions too soon. Even if that person in the first meeting says to you, my gosh, that's the greatest solution I've ever, I know you've got the right solution for me. What's the price? Most people differentiate themselves by falling into the trap of providing the price or getting into the solution. We suggest you distinguish yourself by saying, you know what, Andrew? I really appreciate you sharing all that information with me today. I'd like to go back and reflect on this a little bit. I'd like to spend some time with my team and come back with a really tailored answer for you. How much time could I have? Could I have 24 hours? Could I have a week? Whatever that requires. It's probably going to be the first time that anyone has pitched that person in the last year that someone actually stepped back and said, I'd like to be thoughtful about what you shared with me. So there isn't a blanket answer to when is the right time. If the person is pounding their fist on the desk that I want to give you this business, by all means, I'm suggesting you work, maybe go in the other room and think about it for 10 minutes. But in most cases, sales are complex today. They take time and thoughtfulness. One of the qualities that we find is really absent that people appreciate is thoughtfulness. Because even though that person's the CEO, they've got a bucket full of emails when they leave your meeting. They've got meeting on top of meeting on top of meeting. And all of a sudden, somebody emerged that was going to be thoughtful about them for a moment. And that's the warmth of the relationship starting to work their way through.
I wanted to move on for all of the great information about relationships and how to begin them and how to grow them. What I find interesting about that is it still leads people to a common question about how to repair existing business relationships that have been damaged in some way. Are there one or two key strategies that you can share for how to undertake the repair of a damaged relationship?
Well, we look at relationships in terms of a process. We actually have a model called the relational ladder. And the relational ladder, you go from being an acquaintance to what we call a professional peer to ultimately a handful of relationships becoming respected advisors. And as you go through this process, there's 5 steps. And the first is launching the relationship. You mentioned it earlier, establishing common ground. Once you're able to do that, the relationship transitions into more of a mutual relationship because there's a chance you're going to do some things together. You might make some commitments to the relationship. The other person might make some commitments to the relationship. Now you're starting to have peer-level behavior, and that's where you get a chance to display integrity and trust. Great relationships at that level also use each other's time wisely. That's the third rung, using time purposefully. And I'll stop there on the ladder to get to your question. At some point, a ladder, you can fall off a ladder. And we use the ladder as a model because you can slide down in a business or a personal relationship. And usually it's because of integrity. Usually someone fell out on the integrity side. And the challenging thing is sometimes the person's company is out of integrity, but the person themselves, they're not out of integrity with the other human being they're working with. Maybe there was a price increase that management decided to just do at the end of the year, and there was no forewarning. Well, the person representing that company, if they have a strong relationship, then they'll weather that storm. But if there's been a history of behavior that's not trustworthy, then that person's going to fall off the ladder, which gets us gets us back to the initial question. One of the ways to try to rebuild trust is to realize I'm off the ladder. I have to get back to the first rung of the ladder. And that's all about becoming credible again. And to become credible, we also suggest that you authentically address the issue. Andrew, I understand that our company did some things with prices that you did not expect, and I suspect you believe I knew about it before, and I didn't give you a heads up on that. I'd like to ask you some questions and try to rebuild our relationship. I know we're at a very risky point here in that, and I know I've got to do everything I can to try to recover. And at that point, Andrew has to decide whether he still wants to work with Ed or not. If Andrew is willing and open, and Ed's exhibited some good intentions around the relationship in the past, he'll probably allow him to do that. If Andrew doesn't let Ed do that, then it's probably a good point for Ed to try to exit the business relationship and bring a colleague in to try to start things over again.
1 second there on the idea of when the person has a good standing relationship, but there are elements around him or her that can change that, such as the price increase you mentioned. Let's reverse the roles for a second. The company has had good standing with its clients, but now it's an individual who's had the issue with trust.
Right.
What does an executive in that situation do to handle that?
The executive of the individual who's lost trust.
Yes.
It's time to have some authentic discussions with that individual. It's probably better to talk with the customer and get some corroboration from the customer around what's going on. It's very expensive to eliminate roles and to hire and fire people today, and I believe everybody can be salvaged. I always try to take a positive approach on that. But it all gets down to the relationship with that person, and can that relationship be salvaged? So the first thing I would do, I was a VP of sales for many years. I would go talk to the customer and find out, why is there a disconnect here, what the actual issue is. If it truly is an integrity issue, I'll ask the customer straight up, is it possible to repair that with Ed in the mix here? Or do we need to bring another person in? And depending on which way they take it, then I'll take it down that direction. That
might be an issue that companies experience from time to time, where they assume that the relationship is tied solely to one person. One of the suggestions...
It is a lot.
But one of the suggestions you made, though, is bringing in someone else. And I think that's an interesting idea because, as you said, if you believe every relationship can be salvaged, sometimes it doesn't rest in one person's hands. And now you get into the idea of the group being representative of the organization, and being able to be interchangeable to build or grow the relationship as needed.
Well, you're touching on an area that we call the evolution of horizontal and or lateral and vertical relationships. So let's say, Andrew, you built a great relationship with a customer, and everything's going great. You're professional peers, you're moving up the relational ladder, there's a lot of integrity, trust, you're comfortable with each other, business is flowing, right? It's now time to start thinking about a strategy for when, let's say I'm your customer, I get promoted or I leave, I go to another company. How am I gonna protect myself and our company in that account when everything is concentrated in one person? The first thing I should be doing, the first thing I would suggest you do, is try to meet some people laterally to my role. Try to meet some of the people that report to me. Try to meet my boss, even if my boss is the CEO. And then start launching relationships with these other people laterally and horizontally, laterally and vertically, as we call it. In the context of doing that, it would behoove you to also start bringing more members of your team in. Here's a great example. You're a great salesperson, sales executive, selling professional, whatever. Our parents never expected us to be salespeople. I'm sure my mother held me. She wasn't looking at a future selling professional. She was looking at, oh, maybe little Eddie will be a doctor, or maybe he'll be a lawyer. But we all know that salespeople, and sales is an incredible profession, and generally they make more money than most of the titles I just mentioned. The thing that we try to focus on is, it's time to start thinking about the relationship beyond the business performance you're currently getting, and how do I insulate, how do I bring more people into it so that you're also dispensable, because maybe they want to take you and assign you to another account. When that handoff happens, In general, if the strategies I'm suggesting are not in place, there's about a 52% atrophy in the strength of the relationship. And within a year, price comes up again. And there's a firm called Ask Forensics, and we've studied their research. And they'll say that, Andrew built a great relationship. He spent time, he put the time in, he spent years on this, he knows all the people in the firm, and now he's got to hand the relationship off to a new person. There's the better than 50-50 chance that that person will not have the same relationship you had, will not approach the way you did, and the 3-year contract you negotiated, in year 2 they're going to be complaining about the price.
You began the business, you've led it this entire time, it's been your vision. What has it been like to consider a time when you maybe won't be directing every aspect of the business? What have you done to maintain or guard the vision that you have? And was there any discomfort for you to kind of think of that, to let go a little bit? What's that been like for you?
It's quite cathartic. I will be totally comfortable in 5 years if someone else is the CEO of this company, because my real passion is around sharing the concepts, visiting companies around the world and giving keynote talks and helping them understand, hey, you know what, there is a way, there is a process. It's important, we can possibly help you with that. And so it's been very easy for me. I think a lot of entrepreneurs have a pride of authorship around that they've got to make all the decisions. And I'll give you a great example. My best friend from 2nd grade, who's still my best friend today, is a very successful attorney. And he created a significant law firm in a very small part of the state of Pennsylvania, where he's got 5 or 6 attorneys working for him, but he was the chief decision maker and bottleneck. He decided that he couldn't keep this pace up, and that he was going to take a lesser role in the firm and just see what happened. His business has doubled because every decision didn't have to go across his desk. Every decision didn't rely on him being in town to make a meeting. And we were just playing golf talking about it, and he says, the best thing I ever did was let go. And I was telling him how I'm trying to let go right now. So my suggestion is that we do think beyond the fact that we will live forever, and we do think beyond the fact that we have to make all the decisions. I love it when I have a simple idea and one of my team takes it and takes it well beyond anywhere I could have ever envisioned. That's when I really feel like we're doing something. We're really changing the world.
At the core of Relational Capital Group's business is a concept called the principle of worthy intent. Let me finish by asking you, how has that idea impacted both your leadership and the direction that Relational Capital Group has taken?
Well, the principle of worthy intent is the guiding principle or the foundational rule of our business, and that is putting the other person's best interest ahead of our own. And we share that with all of our customers, all our clients, and we don't make a value judgment when we're sharing that with them that they don't have that. We tend to believe most human beings have other person's best interest at the forefront. The challenge is, does the customer know you've got their best interest ahead of your own? And this is where I like to share the idea that comedians, they tend to be great observers of human behavior. And they observe our behavior, our actions, things we say, and they make it funny for us. I'm suggesting that business professionals, we don't have to be funny, but we observe the behaviors that are coming back to us. For instance, how do I know, if I were to ask you, what are some of your greatest qualities? Maybe you'll say integrity. Maybe you'll say, I keep my promises. You'll come up with a few. Then if I were to ask you, how do you know that? And if you could validate by saying, well, I've been told that I'm really good getting back to people, or I'm great with details, or I never miss a deliverable. So we suggest that we know you've got worthy intentions, but it's the other person's behavior that validates that. We've got some assessments that are based on human behavior in business. And those behaviors are, do they call me back? Will Andrew make extra meeting time for me? Does Andrew share personal or business confidences with me? And we've come up with 35 behaviors that humans exhibit in business. And those are the behaviors that we share with people to see so they can validate whether or not the customer, the colleague, whoever they're working with knows they've got good intentions towards them.
Ed Wallace, thank you so much. It's a
Andrew,
pleasure.
nice working with you. Appreciate it.